Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Pathways to Partnership webinar. So we're excited to bring this virtual event to you today. This is a partnership between Rehabilitation Services Administration in the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services in the Department of Education and the Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Community Living. So I'd like to welcome my partner today is Julie Hawker, Commissioner for Administration on Disabilities. And I guess I should probably introduce myself as well. I'm Mark Schultz, and I am the Commissioner of Rehabilitation Services. So we're excited to bring this webinar to you today. But first, I want to give you a little bit of background on how this came to be. So I want to talk about the connection between education and employment and independent living. The intersection of IDEA, or the Individuals with Disability Education Act, and the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or otherwise known as WIOA or WIOA, creates a real responsibility for schools, VR agencies, and centers for independent living around the provision of transition services for students and youth with disabilities. And as we began that discussion, we really saw the intersection and connection and the importance that education and employment and independent living need to be connected. We need to be on the same page as we provide services to students and youth with disabilities in particular. There are opportunities to collaborate on the provision of transition services, and we think that also includes pre-employment transition services that exist that aren't being fully realized in many places. So today, we're actually modeling the change we'd like to see at the local level. I know when I was the VR director, I was one of those, and we often said, why don't we see them working together at the federal level, right? So guess what? Here we are, and we've started that commitment to work together. We're trying to develop a partnership, and I truly appreciate Julie's openness to that partnership. We've had great conversations, and that have led to a commitment at the federal level now to collaborate through our planning and through our training and technical assistance to increase the opportunities for competitive integrated employment, and with our initial focus being on students and youth with disabilities. There are many great examples of how states and local programs have worked together to build relationships and services and supports that are making a difference in the outcomes for students and youth with disabilities. And today, we're very excited to have 4 states who are going to share information about their partnerships to provide some examples of how to open the doors in your state or your local area to create a collaborative approach that benefits students and youth. And I hope that you're going to see there's no one way or right way to do this. Our intent today is really just to show that it's possible and to open the doors to a conversation for you at the state or at the local level. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel today. And again, my thanks to them for their willingness to share what they're doing. From the state of Illinois, we have Ronnie Patrick, who has been the director of the Illinois Division of Rehabilitation Services since May of 2019. She is a person with a disability who's been an activist for disability rights since 1992. Joining her will be Deanna Robbins, who works for RAMP, a Center for Independent Living, as the Fast Track Coordinator. Fast Track provides transition services to students with disabilities and is funded by the Division of Rehabilitation Services. Joining them will be Eric Hansen, and Eric is the Assistant Bureau Chief for Regions 4 and 5 for the Illinois Division of Rehabilitation Services and oversees the operation of 13 field offices in downstate Illinois. We will also welcome the state of Michigan. Renita King has over 30 years of experience and is the Division Director of Southeast Field Operations for Michigan Rehabilitation Services. Kelly Wynn joins her, and she is the Executive Director of the Disability Network Oakland and Macomb, and out of Troy, Michigan, and that is a Center for Independent Living. Tracy Lewis Jennings is the District Manager of the Eastern District for Michigan Rehabilitation Services, and has 24 years of VR experience. So thank you, Michigan. We also welcome Minnesota. Chris McVeigh is the Director of Strategic Initiatives for Vocational Rehabilitation Services and has 25 years of experience in the VR field as a counselor, a field manager, and administrative leadership. Kelly Krantz is the Director of Independent Living Services for the Metropolitan Center for Independent Living in St. Paul. She began as an IL specialist 12 years ago when the center was started. And joining them will be Lindsay Horowitz, who is the post-secondary transition specialist in the Minnesota Department of Education. Her focus is on interagency collaboration in support of the transition of youth with disabilities to post-secondary education and competitive integrated employment. And last but not least, we have South Carolina. Laura Spears is the State Transition Coordinator for South Carolina Vocational Rehabilitation Department. For the last 9 years of her 25 years with VR, she has served as the Transition Coordinator. Kimberly Tissot serves as the Executive Director for ABLE South Carolina and has led the CIL for the past 10 years. ABLE South Carolina has an entire youth transition department. And joining them will be Dr. Join Payne. He is the Deputy Superintendent of the South Carolina Department of Education and previously served as the State Director of Special Education. So my welcome and my thanks to the panel. So let's begin with the questions. So we know that developing partnerships isn't easy. So let's find out what the spark was that lit the desire to partner in several of these states. So in South Carolina, Centers for Independent Living and VR have a history that in the past was not as collaborative as it is today. So what did you do to build a more positive relationship between VR, schools, and CILs in your state?
Yeah, so this is Kimberly Tissot with ABLE South Carolina. So in the past, we've always had a relationship with South Carolina Vocational Rehabilitation because they were formerly our designated state entity. But there wasn't a lot of talk on how we can work together and help each other out. And honestly, we needed to spend time on building that relationship and trust, which moved us forward. We now collaborate very well together, and we also think that WIOA PREET's requirements also helped push us together, as CILs do have specialized expertise in providing the service. And then as far as schools goes, we've always had a relationship with schools as well, but it was easier to get into a lot of the schools because of the collaboration with both DOE and vocational rehabilitation. So I'm going to let you hear from Laura Spears and John Payne as well, so that you can get their perspective.
Hi, thank you so much, Kimberly. This is Laura Spears. I'm with the Voc Rehab part in South Carolina. And I will tell you, as you heard in the introductions, that all three of us have been around for a little while. So I think we've been on several teams together and have just gotten to know each other. But I think in the beginning, we're all bringing our own agenda to the table. And, there can be some tension. There can be uncertainty as if we are going to be able to work this out. I know for myself, I had to kind of step out of the VR bubble and just listen and really take into consideration what the role of ABLE is. And they are an advocate. That's what they do, is they advocate for the folks that they serve. And I think once you get that in your head and you really sit back and you listen, you find where those common factors. We don't always have to agree on anything. But I will tell you, I have an immense respect for Kimberly, and I've seen what she does. I've worked well with John Payne in the past, and I think it's just not taking it personally, but looking, I said, for those commonalities and how we can mutually serve and benefit those citizens in South Carolina.
And this is John Payne from South Carolina. And just to add to what Kimberly and Laura said, one of my childhood heroes is Fred Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, who always talked about look for the helpers. And when I became state director, that was really important for us to look for the helpers. Back in the fall, I was at a conference with one of my dear friends and colleagues, Ruth Ryder, who used to be with the Office of Special Education Programs, who talked about never about us without us. And really the importance of how we in government, the state government, can ensure that we're bringing advocates like ABLE South Carolina, which is an organization run by individuals with disabilities to support individuals with disability. And that hand was out, and it was just amazing, the collaboration and the work that began that we are continuing to do.
Thank you very much. I think now that we've established that we actually can work together, I think it would be great if we could just have each of the states provide just a brief overview of the programs that they have in place and how they are working together. So why don't we just stay with South Carolina? If you could just give us a brief overview, that would be great. So I believe you're on mute. I can see your...
Oh, technical difficulties. I'm so sorry about that. So we collaborate. So our relationship really began. I served on the IDA Advisory Council, which is with the Department of Ed, but required that the majority of the membership must be parents of children with disability and also people with disabilities. And so that's how our relationship really formed. But now we have a contractual agreement with Department of Education where we provide support to students with disabilities and also provide systems change together. So together we've been able to really change the way that education is moving forward in South Carolina for students with disabilities. And for VR, we actually we have a couple of agreements with VR. We provide pre-employment transition services, and we also provide disability sensitivity training to all incoming VR staff. And so together with these collaborations, we're not only increasing competitive and integrative employment, but we're also really changing the way that our state views employment for people with disabilities. And together we have served thousands of students and youth with disabilities. And I'll let John and Laura speak as well.
I'll go ahead. With the pre-ETS part, I will tell you that's been vital to have that outreach. I know that the folks that Kimberly has sent out into the schools to work with our students are younger, so it's a little more peer support type. And the students really love that. They love to hear from another student with a disability. The one-on-one peer mentoring has just been outstanding, and I've seen firsthand the real benefits of that. So that collaboration, and our counselors in general just feel very comfortable reaching out anytime they need that support and guidance from ABLE. So all around, it's just, they've been an outstanding resource for us.
And this is John to add to both Laura and Kimberly's observations. You know, we created something a number of years ago called the Transition Alliance of South Carolina, where we looked in South Carolina, particularly for our high school students with disabilities, to identify all the folks from government, local school districts, to state government agencies, to our colleges and universities, to our nonprofit advocacy organizations, and try to coalesce around a common purpose and mission. And certainly Voc Rehab and ABLE South Carolina have been just critical in that. And in all of this, I have witnessed firsthand what Kimberly kind of touched on, but it's certainly an inclusion revolution, with more students being educated in inclusive environments, to more students with disabilities graduating high school and continuing their education. I've equally seen a continued mindset shift where special education is seen more as a service, not a place, and getting rid of some mentality and really witness firsthand, because of ABLE's work, the passionate educators in our schools that are making sure that our students with disabilities are getting a world-class education. And it's just been very exciting to see, and we just continue to strengthen the partnership. This has not only been helpful in our schools, but it's also been tremendously beneficial as we look at regulatory changes, policy changes, statutory changes in South Carolina, because it doesn't look like here's the department, here's the state agency making these decisions in a silo or in isolation. And so with the work that we've been able to get through in terms of changing laws, to changing regulations, to further this advocacy mission, having partners like ABLE South Carolina working together with us has made that a tremendously more smooth experience that, you know, really brings value and meaning to our state.
Thank you all. Let's move to Illinois next. If you could just provide us a brief overview of your partnership, that would be great.
Sure. I am Ron Patrick. I'm going to turn it over to Deanna Robbins, who's part of our Center for Independent Living, to describe our partnership, because I want to give the power to the people.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Deanna Robbins. I work for RAMP, which is the Center for Independent Living in Northern Illinois. And we kind of early on in my role as a fast track coordinator, I saw how VR, special education, and Centers for Independent Living all offered different pieces of one puzzle. So through continued advocacy, a willingness to listen to and to support one another, the three agencies are able to provide well-rounded youth services. So for Fast Track specifically, which is easier for me to speak to, RAMP is able to work with students due to that collaboration with schools and DRS VR. Each piece has to be in place to successfully complete the puzzle that is transition services. This is especially true due to the recent challenges of the novel coronavirus, since communication has all altered. I can't provide Fast Track without the funding and approvals from DRS, nor can I reach students without establishing a relationship with our local schools. And then likewise, Fast Track is able to help DRS and the special education departments deliver youth transition services. So the same can be said for other programs like Project Search. We all benefit from these partnerships, which ultimately results in a more positive experience for those we serve.
So thank you for that overview. We'll move on to Michigan next.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tracy Lewis Jennings, and I have the opportunity to just give you a little overview of what we're doing here in Michigan. MRS, I'm going to use an acronym for Michigan Rehabilitation Services, saw an opportunity to seize an opportunity to fortify our relationship with our Centers of Independent Living. And this started back in 2014. And the way we developed that was we were looking at our communities of practice, which gave us a statewide view. And then we brought it to another level at a local level to hear from actual field staff on what they thought we should be doing. It was an opportunity for us to actually listen. The other thing that Michigan Rehabilitation Services did is they dedicated a position as a consultant, and that was me. And it was great because I had worked with the Centers of Independent Living as a counselor, and I started to understand, but when I got the opportunity to see it from a statewide view, and when I say statewide view, Michigan has 15 ILs and we have 13 districts throughout the state. So we were looking at how do we get everyone together? What was that connectivity? And I think I've heard everyone talk about how we learned to listen, and we learned to listen for our philosophies and our values and how that worked with all of our stakeholders. So now we're looking at education, we're looking at the parents and the students that we serve, and we're seeing how our combined efforts would help work with our students. And so in 2014, when WIOA came out, we saw a great opportunity to, MRS, as you know, was already working with transition students, and the ILs had relationships with school. We saw an opportunity to forge that together and work on having more impactful programs because we did it from an innovative approach. And we also learned to listen to the schools, and we've seen that impact as well. Kelly, would you like to tell us a little bit more about from the IL side?
Hi. As one of the CIL directors in Michigan, I came from a long history of very great partnerships with my local MRS. And I can tell you, though, that no relationship is perfect. There's a commitment that you must make to work together. Communication and flexibility is essential. Most importantly, though, what I know is that the reason we might have came together, what Tracy said, in funding and that funding opportunity is not the reason that we stay together today. We stay together because of mutual respect and the quality services that we provide for our shared customers. I mean, it's services like the soft skills training, smart money, self-advocacy, IL assessments, all of those. That's what partnership is about. Thank you.
Thank you for that overview. We really appreciate it. And listening is so important. And so I appreciate that you've taken that to heart. So let's move on then to Minnesota for the last overview.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So really pleased to be part of this presentation today. In Minnesota, over 10 years ago, we started what's called the VR-IL collaboration. And what that is, and we continue to have, is the opportunity for both VR and IL staff to work together. Now, over 10 years ago, we really did not consistently know one another across our programs. And I can speak to that having been a VR counselor at the time that shortly after I became a new manager. But at the time that I was a counselor, my experience of the independent living centers was very spotty and not really too clear on exactly what they did. And so I came into that as a new manager with a team of people who were going to be co-located with an IL staff, an independent living staff. So in the metro, there are 8 centers for independent living across the state of Minnesota, and the collaborations were different according to the local areas. I think that's one of the common themes I'm hearing today from the 4 states that are presenting, is that really bringing it to a local level to say, what does this need to look like? How does this work? And not administering it at the, at the administrative level. So in our metropolitan area, what we determined is the only way that this was really going to move forward and get any steam was to co-locate an IL staff in each VRS team. I can speak from, again, as a manager at that time with my team, pretty quick adoption. I expected that people were going to be maybe reticent to make initial referrals to the IL center staff because of that, lack of overall knowledge about what IL did. But what I can say is that the adoption and the connection of someone co-located within our team led to immediate referrals and a connection and a greater understanding about what each of our programs did. I can speak specifically about an individual that I was aware was having some difficulty in a job search, and adding to that difficulty was the fact that he had no home, that he had no transportation, and those are 2 pretty basic things that if you don't have those in place, a job search is going to be very difficult. Within a very short period of time, the IL staff that we were working with on our team had connected that person to housing, and we were able to get that person a bus pass. There was some bus training that occurred. So specifically and in a very real way, our staff were able to see, wow, this is how they can support us. And as I've described this a number of times, it's like an extension of the VR, an extra length of arm to support that person in their job search and as they had their job start. And I know I have limited time in that to share the story, though, is the person did get a job. He was able to do and achieve some of the things that he wanted to do. They were small achievements, but he was so proud to have his own apartment. He was able to get his car eventually. And, when I talk about my experience with the Metro Center for Independent Living, we have Kelly Krantz, who's joining in this webinar as well. And she was that extra length of arm. She was one of those folks that was the IL representative, and now she's a director of IL services for Metro Center for Independent Living. She was solid gold to the team the VR team that she supported. So, Kelly, would you like to share a bit about our collaboration together?
Sure. Thank you so much, Chris. Yeah, as was mentioned, I'm Kelly, and I was an IL specialist on the original team that went in and co-located with Voc Rehab staff. So I have experience doing that job, as well as then managing the team and now managing the whole department of independent living. I became immediately a coworker and a colleague. People did not hesitate to just walk over to my office and brainstorm on items. And I feel like I was able to contribute a lot to people's employment outcomes, especially, I think, hopefully everybody from CILs will agree that the independent living philosophy and the infusing teaching self-advocacy skills into everything we're doing, I think really brought people's confidence up and contributed to better outcomes in every way. So, better employment outcomes due to some of the services and supports that we were offering, and just getting the IL philosophy out there was really wonderful. I really believe that co-location was the key to making it work. And now in our remote deployment, that has been the foundation to continuing to have a good relationship.
That's great. And it's so great to hear about the outcomes, the focus on outcomes for individuals, because that's really what we're looking for through this partnership. So thank you very much for sharing. I'm going to turn it over to Jay for the next set of questions.
Great. This is Julie Hawker, and my apologies that you can't see me at the moment. I seem to have run into a quick technical difficulty, but I'm going to try to get back online. So hopefully that's okay. And I think I'm joining right back at the correct time. Minnesota, you were just mentioning something that I want to revisit a little bit, because we heard, as you started to describe it, you said start local and build on small achievements and a foundation. And then you talked about one of the early things that you did was you co-located staff. And I want to go back to this, because I think that setting a foundation is something that we need to stop and take time to do. And so can you go back to those early days and tell us a little bit more in detail how you decided to co-locate staff and how you made that work? What did it look like to put that in place and really become coworkers and colleagues as you described it?
Well, thank you, Julie. This is Chris McVeigh again. I know my internet connection is not strong, so hopefully you can hear me. Really, the VRIL collaboration, again, 8 centers for independent living, over 18 VRS teams across the state. Again, at the local level, the planning, I can speak specifically for the metropolitan area, where at that time as managers, VRS managers, and the IL center director, stating, the only way that this is really going to work is if we co-locate a IL staff into each of the VRS teams. I think when we were trying previously to connect, having an IL staff come and deliver classes on a very intermittent basis to our clients was not working. Neither was it working very well to have our clients go to the IL center to access the resources there, at least not in a way that was really leading to some momentum in terms of how we collaborated together. So with that IL staff coming on board, really quickly, every VRS team, especially in the metro area, just really bringing that person on board in their office, having dedicated space. And again, as Kelly was describing, the ability to just walk down the hall and make that connection. They had somebody, if one of the counselors had someone that they wanted to bring by and just introduce that person to the IL staff, that just-in-time kind of connection, the ability to connect without an authorization, without having to, immediately fill out an intake form, really led to that deepening and true partnering that I think is just the best that it can be. I need to be really honest. Since we had to move away from a granted funding way of funding for the IL centers to do the VRIL collaboration and moving towards a contracted process where services are tied to authorization, there's been loss. There's been loss in the ability to make that quick, just-in-time referral, and that the IL centers certainly are very concerned about, well, how are we going to, ensure that we can make payroll when we have to tie the services we provide to really pretty much every minute we're spending with the individual. And that's what I'm saying, is that there's been loss there in terms of the ease of making that connection, and it's just the reality. We've moved forward, and I think it's based on our previous relationship that we've had with our IL centers that is sustaining us through this tough time. And I do believe that we are already starting to come out the other side of this. But in all honesty, and I know that Mark and Julie had said, tell your truth, and that's part of a big part of our truth here in Minnesota. We will move forward. We continue to be in relationship with one another. We understand the value one another brings to each, to the people we serve.
Well, this is Julie on the line, and my apologies. We'll get my video back up, but I think you made several great points there. And it sounds to me like one of the points that you all have stuck to is remaining focused on why you're collaborating and the individuals that you're serving. And that sort of helped you go back and problem solve as new opportunities and barriers arise. And, we want to see that in the students that we serve and work alongside. And so it's good to hear that we're also practicing that as partners. I want to shift a little bit to another state that, as I was hearing more about these partnerships over the last few weeks and getting to know you all through a series of calls, Michigan, you talked to us a bit about how you're using data. And for those of you who know me, you know that data is very important. It can demonstrate outcomes, it can demonstrate progress. And you've not only used it in your state to demonstrate progress, but also to spot opportunity and to go after those opportunities, but also to adjust your resources and how you're managing the program and reaching students. Can you talk to us a little bit just about how you're using that data and what that looks like today?
Yes, good afternoon. This is Vanita King, and I am the Southeast Division Director for Michigan Rehabilitation Services, and thank you for having me. So Michigan Rehab Services does use data to track our progress. We're able to examine both statewide and local and regional data in real time. So we're able to track services being purchased. We're able to track all levels of spending and the pace of spending, and we regularly share that information with our IL partners, even though they have their own data systems. But I do want to point out that we also use our data to drive continuous improvement and innovation, and as well as to measure success. In the first few months of the COVID crisis, our data confirmed what we had already expected, and was that our spending had dipped with our IL partners. And we really had to make some decisions about how we would move forward, not knowing how long the crisis would extend. So we had to shift from almost a 100% in-person service delivery model to a virtual services delivery model. And in doing that, we discovered that there were pockets around the state where there were both youth and adults that had barriers to accessing virtual programming. They were disconnected from technology. So we needed to then look at services that would improve and increase that connectivity to our customers. So not only did we have to shift how we delivered services, but we had to look at the types of services that we were delivering to accommodate the new needs of our customers. And this is where some of the continuous improvement and the innovation came in. And I'm going to turn it over to Kelly.
Yeah, thanks, Vanita. On the CIL side, we also use a statewide database system, which allows us to track many of the same things like demographics, outcomes, services offered. So when COVID hit, we were able to look at the data and see that the authorizations and services were very down in the region. So as a team, we came together to collaborate on the best services for customers, the virtual delivery models, and how to implement that, whether that be through Zoom, Google Classrooms, interactive games students like, such as hoops. We had to started new projects such as technology assessments, which is something we hadn't done before. We had to porch drop tablets, hotspots, and things like that. The surprise was not how we did it was how quickly and effectively we did it. And that's what a good partnership is all about.
Well, that's wonderful. We love hearing about that. I have to say, it doesn't surprise me that you've seen data, technology, and your response to COVID all sort of complement each kind of complement how you're working together. It'll be interesting to see as we move our staffs back eventually. I think we're all looking forward to that. What we might take away from what we learned through this experience. For sure. So I want to thank you guys for those two things. I'm taking great notes, and I'm going to pass it back to Mark.
Thanks, Julie. So I'm going to go back to Minnesota because you shared some of the outcomes that you're experiencing, and partnerships are great, but I think we're really, your focus on the outcomes for individuals was really refreshing. So I'm interested in what other benefits or outcomes that you're experiencing as a result of your partnership. You know, I know that you're providing services in conjunction with VR, and that's one of the strategies that you think is leading to better outcomes. So if you could talk a little more about that, I think that would be important for people to hear.
Okay, thank you. This is Chris McVeigh. I'm getting a lot of feedback. So anyway, what I would say is what we've been able to do in Minnesota is that connection with our IL partner, the Independent Living Services, and understanding that they are experts in the area of independent living, in self-advocacy, in peer mentoring, and their work really falls so nicely into pre-employment transition services for eligible and potentially eligible students. And we need them. I think the other piece that we recognize, and this is the vocational rehabilitation services program recognizes, is that they have expertise and they've already been partnering with schools. We have expertise in vocational rehabilitation and we've been partnering with schools, but it's been in a silo approach. Now we have Department of Education that we've partnered with for many years, the state VR program. But we want to bring Department of Education, our Department of Employment and Economic Development, VRS and SSB, as well as our IL partners together so that we can best serve the students with disabilities, potentially and potentially eligible for VR services, so that we can pour into them, those students, the opportunities for them to try work, to learn about work, to develop their ideas and goals and dreams for the future. Their employment future is what matters most to us in VR. But I think that's really what we need to do next. And it's based on the relationship, again, that we have built with our IL centers over the last decade. We know what they do. We have a better sense of that. There's times where we are maybe not on that same page, but we have to keep communicating. That's the other theme and thread that I'm hearing, is that it's about relationship, it's about communication, it's about intentional opportunities to come together and say, we each have something great to offer students in this case, and how do we do that together and do that in a way that's coordinated with education. And I'm so pleased that Lindsay Horowitz from the Department of Education is here on the call with us. And really, she's just coming into our partnership with the IL centers. She's coming into that knowledge about what we've already been doing with independent living services. And so that to me is the common ingredient we need to have, is recognizing what each of us brings to the table, honoring that, and then finding ways to share the knowledge and the resources with the students and adults that need them.
Thank you for that. I think defining those roles and responsibilities it has to be a starting point. You don't know where the gaps are. You don't know what the strengths are. until you do that, and to really be able to realize the benefits of that partnership. I think that's a great place to start. So, Julie, I'm going to throw an additional question in here that, and this is for any of the states to jump in and respond to, but you all have great partnerships, and they all started a little bit differently, but was there any one particular agency or individual that championed this partnership to initiate and get it going in your state? Or was it just that the intersection and the common goals that just brought you together and it happened at the same time? So if you could just jump in and respond, that would be great.
Mark, we can always call on somebody, so I'm going to pick on Indiana because they've been a little quiet, and we can ask them about their champions.
You mean Illinois?
Yeah, this is Eric Hansen with the Illinois Division of Rehabilitation Services. No harm, no foul. I used to be from Indiana, good state. Actually,
My apologies.
Director Patrick was from Indiana as well, so it's all good. Champions, I think that having a champion or champions is very helpful. We do a lot of things at the local level and have had a lot of successes at the local level, but having somebody that has the connections at the state level with the legislature and other agency directors, I think is really important. And one person that has since recently passed away that I'd like to identify is Ann Ford. And Ann Ford was a CIL director for many years in Illinois. And then she, in '99, went and created the Illinois Network of Centers for Independent Living. And INSIL is a professional organization whose board of directors is comprised of all 22 center directors in Illinois. And so that really allowed her to regularly meet with all of the center directors and communicate with them. And I know that having been with Division of Rehab Services and overseeing the IL grants for the last few years, it really gave me an opportunity to connect with all of the Centers for Independent Living at their board meetings and really develop those relationships and really have good conversations between all of the directors at the same time, myself, the INSIL executive director, and we would bring in other partner agencies. And so Ann was really instrumental in making that all happen. And INSIL's been around since '99, and she since unfortunately passed away about a year and a half ago. But she's somebody that I would probably highlight as a champion,
I mean, this is Ronnie. She worked as an advocate. So she was part of a trade association for CILs, but my predecessor as a director was also very close to her, and he had a disability as well. And so the ability to be able to work with folks that are outside of your organization, and a word that I would use for it is using it as continuous improvement process. So feedback from your external stakeholders and even folks that are your providers is very, very critical for you to be able, as an agency lead, as a leader in any sort of organization, to be able to process that information and and make it happen, because people come to you. I mean, we also need to figure out the nature and respect the nature of independent living centers. One of the core services of CILs are to advocate. And if you don't respect that part of the animal, you're losing a lot of opportunities for the part of the network. And so being somebody who spent, from 1998 until 2019 as a member of 4 different Centers for Independent Living in the Midwest, that, now I'm the director of VR. I need to take the spirit of Centers for Independent Living and understand the feedback that's coming to me now as the agency director, and try to figure out how to, make it happen and make a process for it throughout the division.
That's really, really helpful. And I think, sometimes when new folks come in, Mark and I still consider ourselves new to Washington. We often find that those champions, those individuals who established vision and really just insisted that the way forward was there and that we were all going to go there together can really, really be helpful in so much of our work. I know Mark and I look to people who have paved our ways, been ahead of us, and it's good to hear that at the state level and the local level, especially that you all have identified those people as well. That sometimes in a career, one aha moment is when you realize who has been that visionary, or who just insisted that the barrier be removed, right? Whether that be a real barrier or one that is still before us. I want to go back to each of the states, and I want to ask kind of one wrap up question as we wrap up the panel portion this afternoon, and that is about these aha moments. So reaching beyond knowing who your champions are in your state, was there an aha moment around your partnership or around the mission that you more closely shared than you thought? Where was that one aha moment? And maybe one or two. It's okay. We can have one or two people from each state. Doesn't have to be one. Just kind of share with us what was that one quick aha moment for you that you reflect back on. Maybe it'll give some people who are listening today some fresh ideas. So I'm going to start with South Carolina. Maybe what was those initial aha moments when you got going?
I think it was really mainly around that we all have different levels of expertise, and this is not a competition, and together we are stronger for the students that we serve. And that was really, the beginning of it. And I think that was identified pretty early on. We just had to make it all work.
And I'll just echo that. I really think, I will tell you, as I mentioned earlier, I've been in my role for 9 years. VR in South Carolina has never had the relationship they do with the Department of Ed until John Payne really took lead with that. He's been a champion. And then Kimberly with ABLE, I think that just knowing that passion, I know that these folks mean business and they're going to provide what they need to provide. So I knew joining them, it was just going to make for a great team.
And this is John, very quickly. Both Kimberly and Laura, right? Finding like-minded people, finding people who understand, who foundationally to their core understand and live the why of what we do. Because when you know your why, your how and your what become crystal clear. And just finding those people and realizing and seeing the fruits of your work when you're dedicated with purpose in what you do.
Great. Well, thank you. And I couldn't agree more. When you get to come to work with people who are just as energized and see the opportunity before you, it's quite easy to keep on going. Michigan, I'm going to pivot to you all next.
Thank you. Two things. When we first started, I thought, we were doing, Tracy can probably speak to this, but, you move forward because you both have the passion, there's mutual gain, that there's value on both sides of the table. But I think one aha moment in retrospect is that it is so important to do multi-level messaging at all layers of the Bureau so everybody understands what you understand. And when you don't do that, I think what happens is the message gets stuck and everybody doesn't see the value of those partnerships. So that's an aha moment. And a current aha moment is, quite frankly, the fact that it is, it's not surprising that we work together, but I think what's surprising in this COVID environment is how quickly we were able to suspend our agendas to come together to make sure we're both working on behalf of the customers. And that's really what we both want, is to serve the customers. So those are two that I can add from Michigan. And Kelly might want to add something from the VR side. Excuse me, from the IL side.
Yeah, from the CIL side, I would just have to say that during this pandemic especially, I would have to agree. I've learned that together we can do anything. I mean, it has been a huge aha. Anything we put our minds to, we can do it because together we are stronger. We are much more cohesive than we ever thought. We have put together some great innovative learning opportunities for our staffs, for our students, and the opportunities for our customers are just endless. And it's been a wonderful learning experience.
Awesome. Well, it's going to be hard to follow South Carolina and Michigan, but Illinois, not Indiana. I'm going to ask you to try. So go for it.
I mean, Deanna, you spoke about, what you found. So if you don't mind, I'd like for you to speak some more.
Sure, no problem. That's probably why we got confused because my name's Deanna, but we're Illinois. So that happens actually a lot. Yeah, I think, and I'm kind of new to RAMP, so I'll put that out there. I have been with the company less than 2 years, so I kind of have fresh eyes on this. And then coming into a coordinator position where I see more of the partnerships in work, it's about making sure that when you're having conversations and you're trying to sort of promote the services for these consumers, that you're kind of letting everybody know that, hey, we're not just coming at it as advocates who are now holding you accountable for something, because I think a lot of people somehow see that, but we're trying to support each other. And I think that support is what is more important to focus on. With my program, like I said before, with Fast Track specifically, and you're talking pre-employment skills, it's all levels of that. It's VR, it's the CILs, it's the school. So why not work together? When a student has transition services in their IEP, let us come in or meet online with that student and help you facilitate those transition services. So I think it's just really important in my kind of aha moments when I've been trying to get referrals is that level of support, of establishing that it's not like us versus you, it's all of us together.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So even like the staff, though, and I don't know, Eric, if you have anything to say about that. I have staff needing to receive feedback from the CIL, and I mean that means that you're part of a team. Components of having a good team is being able to say like, you didn't do this, such and being able then to correct course on that, and that does make your team stronger. So just looking at the dynamics of a team, of a good quality team, and trying to make it happen is also something that I think is critical. I don't know, Eric, if you wanted to add anything.
No, I agree wholeheartedly, and I think that really the common denominator in all of this is the customer or the consumer, and really that has to be the focus. And so all of the advocacy, even when it gets really heated, and all of that really is for the benefit of the consumer. And we have to do the best that we can for the consumer, and put differences aside and work together to make things happen for the good of the consumer. Somebody told me one time I had a hard time with conflict and being really a vocal advocate. And somebody said, the people that are coming to you are having a hard time advocating for themselves. And so if you don't serve as their advocate, then who will? And that was really empowering. And so, and really allowed me to become a stronger advocate and a stronger desire to learn more about resources, special education districts, VR, IL. And so, I think that for me was my aha moment, is just the need to really advocate and for the good of the consumer.
Awesome. And it's always great to hear about how also our consumers increase their self-advocacy skills by working with all of you every day. We always love hearing those stories as well. And so I'm going to ask Minnesota, bring us home, and then I'm going to have some closing remarks before we conclude our time together this afternoon.
Sounds good. This is Chris McVeigh again, and I'm just curious if Kelly Krantz from IL Metro Center for Independent Living, maybe starting with your aha.
Hey, thank you. I would say realizing it's going to sound like a cliche, but communication, super key. Over communicate. If you think it might be over communicating, it's probably just the right amount of communicating. I have a meeting with all the managers of the VR teams in the metro area. I mean, in usual times, it would be about quarterly. Everyone knows my face and the face of the managers on the teams. Everybody has our emails. The co-location, it leads to constant communication. That is the key to having a really wonderful, fruitful partnership for the over 12 years we've been doing this. So that was my aha moment, is just like, you have to get your face out there and you have to be communicating all the time.
This is Chris McVeigh, and I could not agree more, and that's my aha. So it's Kelly and I just sharing that's the Minnesota ahas. Handing it back to you, Julie.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And there's nothing like when you and your partner start thinking alike and having the same priorities and thoughts. And I want to thank all of our panelists this afternoon. I want to thank the staffs across the ACL and OSERS who have been working for months to really think through the collaboration at the federal level and what could be at the state and local level. And I want to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon, for kind of bearing with us in the virtual environment, although I think it's brought a lot of us together in a way that maybe it wouldn't have. So I hope that these challenges that we've experienced over the last few months have also showed us new opportunities. I know for my team, that's certainly been the case. When Mark and I started working together a little over a year ago, I believe maybe about a year ago, we started to realize that we both saw an opportunity to improve outcomes and opportunities in the area of competitive integrated employment. And one thing that we both really quickly also agreed on was that high expectations for every student with a disability matters, and that early paid work experiences are critical. And so when we looked at our partnership across the two offices, and we looked at WIOA, and we looked at the spirit of the ADA and the promises that it has for every American with a disability, we knew that the partnership at the federal level not only had to be stronger, but that we wanted it to spread throughout the states and communities across the country. And so I think that all of us recognize the critical opportunity that we have today. And I'm so grateful for the panelists who shared today. They've been sharing with us for several weeks and giving us tons of ideas. A couple of things I heard today: commitment, but with flexibility, seeing that we're a puzzle and we all have important pieces to contribute. Always have a mindset of continuous improvement and think at the local level. I also heard about how something informal can grow into something far more formal, and that really goes to the foundation of having great relationships. And that's just in a 35, 40-minute conversation. Imagine what can happen when you start to build these relationships and really start to plan them out. We know that there are tons of great stories, tons of lives that are being touched and changed, and in many more states than the 4 that we got to highlight today. But the reality is that unemployment in the United States for people with disabilities is still unacceptable, and we have work to do. And so this week, we have celebrated the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. We've celebrated our achievements, but we have also, for so many of us, recommitted to the vision and the promises of the law. And a lot of that centers around our opportunity to continue to improve outcomes related to competitive integrated employment. At the federal level, you can see that our commitment is strong and unwavering, and that competitive integrated employment is the way forward. Today, we invite you, though, to close with us on a challenge that we take and a challenge we want to give to you. And that challenge is to today, before you go home, or tomorrow, first thing. Connect with your partners, old and new. Pick up the phone, grab a coffee virtually, shoot an email, begin those conversations, get to know each other, or if you've been out of touch, reconnect. We really want to hear about those connections with your partners and set up a meeting. Take that first step. Talk about your shared mission. Talk about the students that you're both serving and working alongside. Talk about the resources that you utilize and the opportunities that are within the communities where you all live and work. And share that with us. Tell us how it's going. Contact your project officer. Tell us how those connections are going and how we can connect with you. And I'm sure that our panelists would also be glad to talk about some of the ways that they've really broken down some of those barriers. And so we invite you, we challenge you to take those first key steps. And we want to remind you that at the federal level, we see this as our own recommitment. Our own recommitment to you all, to the programs that we have the opportunity to lead and to serve, and ultimately to the students in the United States who have disabilities who are looking to very, very bright futures. And again, this evening, I want to thank you all for diving into our panelists for being so open and honest this afternoon. And I want to thank my friend and my colleague, Mark, for joining me and for really striving forward in this partnership. So with that, I'll say goodnight and thank you. Have a great day.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services at taxpayer expense.